You got all these different user interfaces, and the evolution now is just amazing. Even when I was a kid, I remember playing video games, and it was all about Atari, and my brothers used to get angry because we're never going to get a turn. And then what did it become?
There's programs out there now. You have Windows, and if your window has a broken seal, it starts getting what? Humidity inside it, right? I get on my phone, I call you. Hey, I think my window has a broken seal. They will say to you, take a picture of it or point your webcam at it. Now, here's what's happening. It'll immediately take your phone number and look up your customer service record. Guess what? Now, it'll check the technician's availability and see if they can schedule it for a certain day, and it'll spit out a notification and send it and put it in your calendar with an email. No human intervention. Do all that. Imagine if a human had to do all that.
It's fascinating.
I didn't like it as a kid, but I like it now.
The man you've been waiting for, John, the sales machine, Rankins.
Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is a sales beast. He grew up in one of the roughest parts of Chicago, got an engineering degree, an MBA, and then built a monster career as a VP of international sales at a $3 billion Fortune 500 company. President of global sales for a $420 million company, and now one of the top sales minds in the world. He's written 13 books, has a YouTube channel with over 200,000 subscribers, and just dropped a new one, Future of Selling, Rise of AI Agents. He is the head of the Sellinger Group for the last 18 years and has shared the stage with legends like Zig Ziglar, John Maxwell, and Damon John. If you care about the future of selling and how AI is going to flip the script, listen up, people. Welcome, Victor Antonio.
John, thank you for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Man, I'm looking forward to this conversation. Like I said, I got your book more than 5 years ago and really just had a lot of mindset shifts in there about, where is sales going? Not just where it's been, but where is it going? And so why don't we start with your journey? I mean, you're an engineer, and I funny enough, I've interviewed Aaron Ross that built Salesforce to the first 100 million predictable revenue. I interviewed, and these guys are people with engineering backgrounds that figure things out. Mark Roberge from HubSpot, right? The sales acceleration for.
By the way, one of my favorite books, the Sales Acceleration Formula, one of my favorite books. I'm not just saying that.
Yeah, the guy is a genius. And we're talking someone who did not have a background in sales, came from engineering background, and then built one of the sales forces that got the first 10,000 customers for HubSpot. So,
yeah, by the way, I want to put a small emphasis on that book and why I like it. It's one thing to say you like it, but here's why. It is probably the best sales recruitment book I've run across. The way he recruits salespeople and how he outlines it in that book is the genius for me in that book. That's why it's on my golden shelf.
Yeah, exactly. And the way he created a formula for you to follow step by step, and people follow step by step, is the recipe. It's the recipe to grow and scale a sustainable sales force. So speaking to that, just a different sort of admiration, because I came from the streets and it wasn't Wall Street, right? And my education was from knocking on doors, right? And eventually learning and evolving from B2C sales to B2B sales. What was your journey?
The journey began in Chicago, obviously. So my family's originally from Puerto Rico. So, basic hard knock life, food stamps, government cheese, powdered milk. We lived in the inner city. My mother was like, when I graduated from high school, it's either, go to college or you have to go work with your father in the factory, which was not a pleasant thing. And so I said, I'm going to get a degree. I asked my teacher, what's the best degree to get? He says, if you want to make money, Victor, get an engineering degree. To which I said, okay. And I just picked electrical engineering. That's a true story. Got my engineering degree, eventually got my MBA. But as I was a software engineer starting out, I worked for Honeywell. Now, I'll pause here because there's a little story I got to tell. I did an internship for Honeywell, and I worked for something called the Underseas Systems Division. And if you saw the movie The Hunt for Red October, U.S. submarine, Russian submarines. Well, the U.S. submarine was using in that movie, I think it was a Mach 48 torpedo system, right? Now, when I interned at Honeywell, the Undersea Systems Division, I worked on the next gen torpedo system, which was the Mach 50, which had AI, an expert-based system. And so this was the late 80s. And that was the first time I got introduced. I'm dating myself, but that was the first time I got introduced to AI. So I knew about AI. Fast forward, was in engineering for quite a while. After a while, I didn't like it anymore, John. I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so eventually I moved over into sales. And when I moved over into sales, and by the way, I went through several modifications. I became an application engineer, then a service engineer, then a customer sales support person, and eventually went into sales. And when I got into sales, I found my hyperpad. I was really good at it. And the reason I was good at it was a big part of it was I had a technical background. So I can sell the actual product. And I learned I did Toastmasters where I learned how to speak. So technical background and you learn how to speak, put those two things together. It's a powerful combination. And that's actually how I got into sales and then just became very successful. And then eventually just decided to kind of, do my own thing and, start my own business. And by the way, I think you know this already. It's one thing working for a company. That's one type of education. Starting your own business, it's a whole other education. That's the school of hard knocks. So it's been a fascinating journey. Wouldn't trade it for anything. I've had a great ride.
Yeah, phenomenal. And that government cheese on a grilled cheese sandwich, I don't care what anybody says. It was amazing.
Get your Wonder Bread.
Hey, man, I segregated the neighborhood. Coachella, California. Grew up with a single mom on food stamps, stood in line for that government cheese and butter. And it was real butter.
Crap, didn't get the butter. No, I don't remember the butter. Okay.
Yeah, well, so I feel you. And I piloted the USS Houston from San Diego right after the hunt for Red October to Hawaii to Pearl Harbor to do the refit. So I know all about the movie Hunt for Red October because I piloted that submarine. They called it the USS Dallas in the movie. It was the Houston.
Interesting.
And by the way, that's common knowledge now. That's too funny. We have a lot of background. Yeah. And, I was intrigued by AI, even when IBM was using it for Watson's to actually use artificial intelligence, and whether it's called machine learning or large language model learning. That's how Watson's was actually playing against chess masters, right? It was artificial intelligence. It's been around for quite a while. The public knows it as ChatGPT predominantly. I mean, if you look at the overall scope of what people understand. And now, there's so many people out there selling AI courses. There's people talking about chatbots. And then there's people talking about the rise of agents, which is agentic AI that uses large LLMs or, it's got to go very deep to use machine learning, right? You've got to have massive amounts of data. And so people are saying, you get good at AI or you're going to be replaced by somebody who got good at AI. And you talk about, I saw a recent post. The fact is, and you don't want to sound harsh, but this is the harsh facts. There's going to be displacement of many different roles and responsibilities in companies. That's a fact. Whether you like the news or not, it's just a fact. There's going to be a complete displacement. But what I see, and I'm in boardrooms, I sell to one-on-many, I can sell one-on-one because it's all service for me. So it's just another conversation. How can I solve your problem? Like an engineer does, like you do, right? So that is reality. Whether you like the reality or you don't like the reality, that's where we're at. And so, 8 years ago, I believe it's more than 8 years ago, you wrote the book. Did you get anything wrong?
No, I don't think so. So when I wrote Sales Ex Machina, I'd already begun to see and I tell the story. I was in Seoul, Korea, right? And I was doing a presentation for, I believe it was Cigna at the time. And I remember we were done with the presentation, and I remember the VP of the region says, "Hey, Victor, would you like to see our call center?" Excuse me. To which I said, "Sure." I was between time. Why not kill some time? And I'd never been in a live call center. So I said, "Sure, let's go check it out." So we go down, several floors. It's a massive, big building. Let's just say, John, just have this visual in mind. There's 100 bays, right? With 100 people making calls, right? Typical call center. And I remember asking, I said, "Well, I have a question." I said, "Let's say you close 20% of your deals, right? And these people get 100 calls, right? And so 100 calls, you close 20, you didn't close 80, right?" I said, "How do you determine, one, who to call back? Like who's worth calling back? Two, how do you determine who's not worth calling back? Or three, how do you determine who's worth calling back, but maybe not now, just do a follow-up in a month?" And I thought he was going to say something like, well, Victor, it's all about the conversation. It's all about gut instinct. It's all about understanding sales process, the psychology and all that. He says, no. He says, we're using natural language processing. I said, what? He says, Victor, again, this is teen. He says to me, no, we record the calls and we listen for tone, inflection, keyword clouds, questions being asked. 2016, he says this to me and my jaw just dropped. And I believe his revenue improvement with using natural language processing at the time was like 37% once they started deploying it. And in my brain, there was a while since, let's say, the late 80s to, let's say, 2016, there was this thing we always called the AI winter, because not a lot was going on with AI because expert systems, rule-based systems had their limitations. But in that time, we've had the internet, we've had bandwidth, we have connectivity, we have fiber optics, we have cheaper storage, higher processing power, so forth and so on. And all of a sudden, I'm like, it's back. AI is now different. It's no longer a rule-based system. This is true machine learning. And by the way, just another difference is think of expert-based system as somebody has to write the rules out, an expert. Like if I were to tap into your brain, John, and I said, okay, John, give me every rule for saying, you would have to give me all the rules. I would have to code that into the machine, and the machine would use all those rules to make decisions. That's an expert-based system. I take an expert like John, I code all his rules, what they call the heuristics, the rules, and that becomes an expert-based system. The problem with that, it has this limitation, right? Because I probably can't capture all the information. There's probably some nuances there, and there's a limit to your expertise like anybody else, right? So machine learning is that now it's learning from, let's say, just to exaggerate, 1,000 experts, and it's taking data from 1,000 experts, but now nobody's writing the code. It's actually doing it itself. It's writing its own code. And so when I saw this 2016, I'm like, it's back. And then I just went down the rabbit hole and started exploring it. And nobody was talking about it. Like the book Sales Ex Machina did not sell well. I think I sold maybe, if I'm lucky, 50 copies because people were like, Sales Ex Machina, how AI is transforming the world of selling. Nobody was talking about AI in 2017 when I wrote the book and we published it January of 2018. And so people were like, look at me, I had 3 heads. And I was making a lot of these predictions that are coming true. And I'm not bragging, I was right. And it's happening right now. Now, I did not anticipate that in November of 2022, ChatGPT would be launched. Better yet, what's an even better coincidental story. When I published Sales Ex Machina in January of 2018, that same year, the folks over at Google published a paper called Attention is All You Need. And Attention is All You Need is about Transformer, the architecture that would be used as a foundational model for ChatGPT. So the very year that I published the book is when the first paper came out that actually described what a transformer, that's the T in the GPT, would look like. And that's what ChatGPT and all these large language models are built on, that one Google paper. So to me, it's been an interesting, I did not expect that. And then ChatGPT, I'll just say the transformer architecture is basically accelerated everything and faster than even I could have conceived. That part I didn't get. I knew it was coming, but I thought it would be another, 5, 10, 15 years, but not at this speed. I got to be honest about that.
Yeah. So, and that's what I thought was amazing about your book. The fact that, you were way ahead of its time. And, even when I had Brad on the show, mm-hmm. and, I was just with Bradley and mm-hmm. I flew into Vegas, and then he had to go speak in California. He's like, hey man, what are you doing tomorrow? And I'm like, I'm here. The weekend it's reserved for my mom. It's Mother's Day. He goes, but what about tomorrow? Because I was in Vegas and I have family in Vegas. And I said, nothing. So we flew on a private jet. We went and we spoke and we talked about his journey after having been on the podcast. And in 2002, he was ahead of his time for the learning management system. Lightspeed was the trailblazer, his first, right? Now there's a ton of LMSs out there. Yeah. And he said, he was on the verge of bankruptcy. He had to go back and get a job and finance his company, and nobody believed. But he said, I just knew it. And, the internet had to catch up because it's interactive video-based training. But, he saw it. And,
what I like about his product was there were a lot of LMS systems already out there. What I saw as the advantage of Brad Lee and what he did differently was he made his more customizable. In other words, you can brand it your way, which I thought was brilliant. Number 2, his price structure I thought was more reasonable than everybody was selling to large corporations, enterprise businesses. Brad Lee, in my opinion, went after the mid-market and small business owners and maybe even entrepreneurs and sold it at that level. But his branding ability, his user interface, his GUI was just spectacular. And then the fact that, again, his prices were reasonable compared to what these other LMSs were offering large companies, I think he found that niche. He found that hole, so to speak, and he took it. He ran through it.
Yeah. To me, his genius was understanding the accountability and the interactivity piece, whereas most LMSs simply were just video. You're just watching a video. There was no interactivity or accountability there. And Brad and I, funny enough, after we met, realized that he and I were in the same organization 20 years ago, but we're just up and comers. And he left and went to sell cars and then built Lightspeed. And then I just kept doing what I was doing, but then eventually built the sales machine. So it's remarkable how you saw it all coming, and it's in alignment with what you're saying in the book. But what were the biggest surprises, and are the biggest surprises now that you see, and the pace of growth, and where is it going?
Yeah, I think what people don't understand, John, is that, and I heard this line that's not mine, and these two phrases really hit me. One is that the cost of knowledge is going to zero. Just think about that phrase. The cost of acquiring knowledge is going to zero, which means I have Einstein in a box, right? It means I can ask ChatGPT or any large language model, Anthropic, Perplexity, whatever it may be. And so the cost of acquiring that knowledge is almost zero now. And it's just going to accelerate. The other thing people don't understand is that we have linear thinking. We think, for every unit of time we invest, we'll get a unit of result back. Unit of time invested, result back. Just typical investment. It's not the way this works. This is an exponential technology, and we're using linear thinking to try to understand it. And so when you think about exponential, there's always the knee, and we've rounded the knee of the exponential, and it's going vertical. Like this thing is, I hear people criticizing ChatGPT or any large language model. I'm like, do you understand that this is like the beginning? This is like the worst it will be. It's like if it was evolution, I think Yuval Harari said it best. If this was evolution, the large language model as we have it today is like the one cell amoeba in the chain of evolution, which means it's going to accelerate. And for those of you who are old enough to remember, if you remember dial-up, the tone, the beep, trying to get locked on online was very difficult. If you remember the first interface for the internet, it was horrible. All this stuff was horrible compared to what we have today. All that said, what surprises me is, I think what's really interesting is how people are holding on to this thought that a machine can't replace you. See, so I'll put three categories. Let me be clear about categories here. So first of all, there's replacement, there's displacement, and a third category nobody talks about, which is abatement. Let me explain. So replacement is pretty easy, right? You're going to replace, and we're not going to replace that job, right? Displacement is, okay, you don't have to do this anymore, so you're going to find another job over here. What I would argue is that, no, you're going to be replaced. This is not like the transition from, when computers came online, well, then you can go get some other job because there's manufacturing. The thing is, manufacturing is going to be taken over by computers. Anybody who looks at Amazon or any company right now with robotics is understanding this. There is no displacement coming. The displacement window is getting smaller. And I don't think people understand this. And again, somebody's going to hear this right now and say, Victor, you're being negative, you're being a pessimist, you're being skeptical. No, I'm telling you. Just like I was right years ago, I'm right again. I know this because I can't see it. There's not going to be a one-to-one replacement displacement ratio. There's going to be 10 people get replaced, and maybe there's one displaced to another position. That's it. So you're seeing a lot of companies use euphemism like, well, once people start using AI, we're just going to have to rebalance the workforce. We're going to have to reassign roles. This is just a euphemism for saying, we're going to fire you. You just don't know it yet. A lot of people will be cut out. Now, the third category is abatement. Now, this is the silent killer right here. And I'll give you an example of what abatement is. Abatement is you never hired them in the first place. Salesforce made a statement at the beginning of the year. Mark Benioff, CEO of Salesforce, said, this coming year, 2025, we will not hire any engineers for coding. That's what he said. We're going to hire, he said, over 2,500 salespeople because we need somebody to sell the agentic system we have, Agentforce, which is their new product, but we're not going to be hiring coders. That's what I mean by abatement. Companies are not hiring anymore. You're going to start seeing, billion-dollar companies that are valued $1 billion with less than 10 people. And for those of you who are skeptical, say, I don't think so, Victor. Remember, Instagram only had 13 people when Facebook bought them for over $1 billion. So think about this. You're going to start seeing flatter companies. You're going to see this displacement. And I'll say this to you here, John, and I want you to record this and then show it to me in 5 years. You're going to see a ramp up in unemployment because the replacement speed isn't there. So people are saying, well, you know what? You got to reskill for AI. Here's the problem with that statement. That's an old model thinking. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 50, 20, I would have said, you're right, reskill. But the thing is, you can't, as a human being, reskill fast enough when compared to AI. In other words, you're going to be replaced. And you're not going to be displaced. You're simply going to be replaced. You're going to see, The Guardian just published an article out of the UK that already in 2 years, like 2.5 years, a third of entry-level white-collar jobs are gone. One website, I think it was Indeed, don't quote me on this, I think it's Indeed, the website, has already seen a fall like 20 to 25% in postings for positions for college graduates. So it's happening already. If you're a white-collar worker, entry-level, man, you're going to have it hard. Now, let me get positive for a second, so it's not just a one-sided argument here.
It's not negative. It's just reality.
So the blue-collar industry is going to see an explosion. You're going to start hearing about millionaire plumbers, millionaire HVAC
Amen.
people, because all of a sudden that's the shift. If I had young kids, I got to be honest, I don't know what I tell them. But one of the things I would tell them is that, look, the trades is, definitely if you want security, the trades are going to be it. And so all this is to say is that when you ask me what's the one thing I see coming, that's what people are denying. And I'll give you one more story, John, because I think this is a very powerful story. Last year, the first AI-related death was reported, and not many people talked about this. So let me tell you the story. So there's a company called Character.ai. And what it is that you can create your avatar. And then, the more you talk to the avatar, much like ChatGPT or again, any large language model. By the way, for those of you who think I promote ChatGPT, I use ChatGPT, Perplexity, and I use Claude. When it comes to writing and indexing, I like Claude, by the way, as a side note. But let's say you got ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT Plus, which is $20 a month. Every time I talk to ChatGPT, it's keeping all that in their context window in their memory, right? So getting back to this company, Character.ai, you can go online. So this young man came from a broken family. I think he was 16 years old, came from a broken family. And so he created this avatar called Daenerys Targaryen, Game of Thrones, right? The Queen of the Dragons. And so he began a relationship with this avatar, right? And by the way, this is already documented. Australia did an interesting 60-minute piece on people who are actually falling in love and marrying their avatars, right, that they've created. But anyway, back to the story. So Character.ai is getting sued, obviously, because what happened is the following. The young man who was having problems, and I'm paraphrasing here, okay? So look for the story yourself so you read the details, tells the avatar, I want to kill myself. Not happy, wants to kill himself. Avatar says, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, right? And then, so the avatar talks him out of it. But one time he uses a euphemism for death. And he says, I just want to come home to you. The avatar, thinking that's literally what he means, says, I want you to come home to me. No, you don't understand. I want to come home to you right now. Says, I want you to come home to me right now. Goes in the bathroom and then takes his life. Right? So that's the first AI-related death. And so all this is to say, not to be morbid, but all this is to say is that people say avatars or AI can't, empathize with a human. To which I always respond, it doesn't have to empathize. It just has to simulate empathy. And that's an important distinction. It doesn't have to be empathetic. All it has to do is simulate empathy. And you will project onto that avatar that it is being empathetic, because that's the way the human brain works. And so these are some of the changes that are coming. And these avatars are going to get to the point where, one, you can't even tell. You're going to watch a video and you're not going to be able to tell. Anybody who, by the way, if you don't believe me, just to start seeing what's coming our way, go to YouTube, type in AI films. Just type in AI space films and see what's out there already. And this is the worst it's going to get. It's just going to get so much better. And so all this is coming from a video standpoint, from a voice standpoint. We're going to have avatars that you're not going to be able to distinguish that whether they're human or not. It's going to pass the Turing test. And so I think people are still in denial that this is happening and this is coming. And so when I talk to different companies about this, it's almost like every time I'm done, John, it's almost like it's silence in the room, because I show them things, what's there. Here, let me show you this, let me show you that. And they're like, oh, I didn't know. I didn't see that coming. And so it's changing everything. It's going to change the way we sell. And again, let's talk about the sales machine, how it's going to be, in a sense, a sales machine. Because what's going to happen, you're going to have, in my book, The Future of Selling, I talk about this, you're going to have an agent that's going to know you better than you know yourself, so to speak. So every time you talk to it, it just knows you, John. I will have my own avatar. And every time I talk to mine, it'll just know me better. It'll remember every conversation. Think about this. Right now, if I asked you to remember 4 or 5 objects, you probably go, okay, I think I can remember 4 or 5 objects, right? That would be current memory. Well, today, I think it's Gemini that has one that has over 200 million tokens, which represents about 1.75 million words in current memory. Now I just want you to hold this thought in your head. It has 1.75 million words in current memory, which means it can remember anything you said 10 years ago. It has it in current memory. Perfect recall. No memory distortion like humans. Perfect recall. Think about that. And so all of a sudden, you're going to say to your agent, I want to buy it. And I show this example. I forgot the guy's name, but he wants to buy a television. And you're going to literally tell your agent, I want to buy a TV. I don't want to spend more than $1,000. I want it to be at least 65 inch. I want it to be a QLED. Da, 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 da. And I said, I need you to go out there, find me, look at all the reviews on Google, look at all, blah, 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 you get the idea. And then come back with at least 3 suggestions and then help you make a buying decision. And it will do that for you. But what does that mean for sales now? Think about this for a second, John. If I'm sending out my agent to do this, what's going to happen is, if I look at the spectrum of simple to complex sale, think of Pac-Man just gobbling on the simple. Quacka, 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 right? Simple sales will be eliminated. Now, there's going to be a part where it's a complex sale, where you're going to have to talk to some sales experts, right? Or engineers. I think that will always be reserved, right? Because what's going to happen is that the agent can only go so far and bring back, look, I found 3 companies. Here are the reviews. Here's how they can help you. It'll do the full matrix and give you a comparative analysis and then say, these are the 3 companies I would talk to specifically. And then they will reach out to you and then you would have to close the deal. So I'm not saying sales is going to be eliminated. I'm saying on the spectrum of selling, simple to complex, it's going to go 60, 70, 80% down the field and eliminate all the simple stuff. We're going to buy a car. How we're going to buy a car? And AI will buy it for us. TV, AI will do it for us. So I think all this is coming, and I don't know if we're ready for it.
Yeah, and it's going to do it immediately.
Well, it's pretty quick. It's going to happen. Like I said, I don't think we understand that in the last 10 years, somebody had this number, and I'm trying to recall it. In the last 10 years, they talked about an acceleration, right? In the last 10 years, how these large language models have accelerated. That if we take the same velocity, it would be 1 million times faster than it is today, which I can't even comprehend that. I just cannot comprehend.
Well, it's like a lot of Bitcoin millionaires.
It's not so much, maybe, but I
mean,
think
as far as the trajectory, let me correct myself. It's like the valuation of ChatGPT to the stratosphere, and almost immediately,
John. I wonder, John. I have a different view on it, and again, I could be wrong. Because like I said, nobody really knows. What's happening now is these large language models, I believe, will become commodities. I don't know if I'm a private equity person, I don't know if I want to invest in one of these companies, because in January, I don't know if you heard about DeepSeek. DeepSeek was able to replicate with 92% efficiency what ChatGPT was doing. Right. And so all of a sudden, it's dizzying right now to try to keep up with all these launching of large language models. And it reminds me of the .com thing, where everybody was building stuff. And then after a while, when the dust settled, 95, 98% of those companies are gone. I'm not saying ChatGPT is going to be gone. Their valuation is crazy. I think they'll still be one of the ones standing. But all these large language models will become a commodity, I think. And so the question then becomes for these companies, I'm thinking about it, is if everybody starts having good large language models, what is your real value? By the way, have you noticed this? And this will be revealing because it's true about me. I wonder if it's true about you. Do you find yourself now, if you subscribe to any of these large language models or any software product, do you find yourself not doing the annual subscription? You just do the monthly subscription? Do you find yourself doing that?
No, but for me, I don't major in minor, and that's from, John Maxwell. If you major in minor, expect minor. I like to major in major. So I don't really look at those small little details.
Like what? I'm confused. I'm not saying.
So I don't look at the monthly subscription thing and how much it costs, because to me, it's so insignificant. Like you said, the cost of knowledge now is going to zero. And so if I'm spending $20 a month for ChatGPT, It's like when I go out and buy a book, my psychology is the best thing, the most valuable thing you could do with your money ever is go spend $20 on a book to someone who spent their entire life
Writing it.
learning about those different experiences and putting it to paper or even, digital audio. Like, if you want value, there's so many experts out there and nobody goes to libraries, right? And I don't.
No,
I have thousands of books.
But I want to bring it back to the central point because I know where you're going, but I want to bring it back to the AI piece. It's what's happening now is people are not doing annuals because what's happening is these large language models are advancing so quickly that I don't want to do a yearly subscription with you because in 2 months, another one's going to launch that's going to be even better. So people are having subscription fatigue. So what's happening is you're seeing this shift. It's not about majoring in the minors and not wanting to pay the $20. It's more about, well, I'm not going to buy an annual subscription because in another month, there'll be a better model. And I can just jump over here. And so what's happening? You're seeing a lot of subscription hopping. That's a good phrase, actually. So you're seeing a lot of subscription hopping because of that. But to the original point is I wonder, and I don't know, will these large language models get to the point where they're just a commodity? And so when we talk about the future of selling, I view the again, whatever that name of that big system is, where it has inputs from all these different databases, it's going to get even more intelligent. And it's going to be able to point the guns as far as where to get sales and uncover insights. And so I think that's going to be helpful. But the exciting part is that if you're a small business owner or an entrepreneur starting out, you can now build a business with all these digital agents to do all these. You can create a marketing avatar that does marketing. Are you familiar with Agentforce, what Salesforce has launched? Have you ever played with it?
I'm very familiar, and I actually went to a Salesforce conference here in Manila, and they talked about everything they're doing. And I've already hired, in actuality, like you're saying, a small business because I'm not Google. And the sales machine, literally, we hired AI architects and engineers that have worked for 12 years in the industry, and we've immediately pivoted into V3 version 3 of the sales machine, and our architects work for Intel, work for the Department of Defense. I got one from America and I got one from Asia, and we're combining their knowledge. And what they're doing is they're literally building a social network of agents, because what we want to do better than anybody else, or different, not so much better, different than everybody else, is have the world's first sales, marketing, and customer success system powered by AI in the world. And so what does that mean? We're literally building out not just the architecture, the infrastructure, the machine, but we're doing it with a social network of agents that all communicate and check and suggest how each one of those AI agents can get better using best practices, like you said. And it's all happening in an ecosystem of agents. So when you talk about the power abatement, and you didn't say it was the power of abatement, but essentially I don't even have to look for this social network of different expertise in marketing, in sales, in customer service, in customer success, because I'll have agents following up and eliminating the redundant work. And marketing will talk to sales, and sales will talk to marketing, and customer service will talk to sales and marketing, and customer success will talk to sales and marketing and customer service. And it would be an entire ecosystem, a social network of agents, an entire agent force, which is what I believe Salesforce is trying to create.
No, it's not what they're trying to create. It's what they created. I think right now, if you were to subscribe to Agentforce, I think you'd get over 1,000 different agents that are already in the system. They're already done. So all you have to do is pull down menus, tell them what to program them, give them a role, the whole bit, and they're feeding off the data. Agentforce is based off the Salesforce platform, obviously. According to Mark Benioff, they do about, and it was a ridiculous number, like a trillion transactions a month or a week. It was some crazy number like that. So it's using that data to make those decisions. My point is that, so now you're going to have agents. I think Microsoft, Satya Nadella, CEO, his initial launch was like 1,200 different agents. So you can go in and just choose an agent and then just build it. It's all built for you. In other words, you don't have to program anything anymore. And I think that's another major shift is if you hear this phrase called vibe coding means I don't have to know programming anymore. I can go to, there's websites like Replit, Cursor, where I can type in, I want to build a website like ABC. I'll just say, I want to build a website just like Brad Lee, right? It'll go look at the website and begin building it in front of me. I can say, no, I don't like the way the navigation bar works. Can you change that? I don't like the color scheme. Can you do that? Can you brand it differently? So the new coding language is English or your natural language. So think about that for a second. Not only do you need less people, you are now going to be empowered to code. And it's only going to require you knowing your own language. So you can do it in English, Spanish, whatever it may be, Filipino, whatever it may be. And so those are the shifts that are coming. I look at AI like a globe, those snow globes, and somebody is shaking it up. And then nobody knows how this is going to settle out. And it's really messy right now.
Hey, I get it. And, it's funny is I go back in time and I love the stories, right? So, if you look at MS-DOS, right, which is the beginning of what code looked like and how a personal computer can, advance. And then, you got Windows and you got all these different user interfaces. And the evolution now is just amazing. And even when I was a kid,
I go back to the Commodore 64 when it was just basic coding. That's how far back I go. Yeah. That's kind of crazy.
Well, I remember playing, video games, and it was all about Atari. And, there's only a couple different games. There was Space Invaders, and I used to roll it over, right? 999, and it rolls over and starts again. And my brothers used to get angry because they're like, John's never going to stop. We're never going to get a turn. But it was such basics, right? It was like the ping pong. And then what did it become? If you look at gaming now, it's insanity. It's insanity. It's so refined.
There's a story to be told there, because if you listen to the Jensen Huang, which is the CEO of NVIDIA, which is the GPUs, the graphic processing units, the engines behind this, it's really serendipitous that they build graphic processing units for gaming, right? And as they build it out for gaming, they said, hey, there's this thing called Bitcoin. Say, I wonder if we could use it for that. And then all of a sudden, that's why people started, again, buying GPUs, right? So they can mine for Bitcoin. And then they said there's this thing called AI. Wait a minute.
If you're enjoying this episode and you're picking up what I'm putting down and what the guests are actually putting out there, do me a favor, like and comment what you liked about the episode, or even comment what would you like to hear, what topics would you like to hear in the future, because believe me, it matters. I read absolutely every single one of them, and I want to bring you more and more value to help companies scale so that we can grow this podcast to make a bigger difference. Now let's get back to the show.
We're trying to figure out, this graphic processing units. Well, we're trying to get image to word. We went from word to image. Now we just image to word. And that's how NVIDIA it's just interesting how it's a confluence of connectivity. They just met there, and then AI took off, because AI wouldn't be AI today without what's happening in the GPU or the graphic processing gaming industry.
The computing power, the actual computer power and data storage. It's, just like Brad Lee from ChatGPT, the video, it'd take forever to load back in 2002. Now everything is instantaneous because we have increased the capacity and the bandwidth.
Yeah.
And so,
you think about it, we laid down a fiber optic network across the world in the last, let's say 15, 20 years, easy, maybe 20 years. And so now you got, this is not copper line anymore. You got fiber optics. You got pure glass carrying light waves at 2.5 gig per second. You got real speed now, and so all these technologies, it's a confluence of technologies that it's really accelerating everything that's happening now. So it's really, to me, it's fascinating what's happening.
It's absolutely fascinating. And I want to bring it, I want to bring it into today, because, we can predict where it's going. I think it's infinite about how it can grow. We don't even know how much AI can grow. And there's going to be pluses and minuses to everything, but overall, I think it's going to be great. So you've been in this a while. You've been talking about it since 2008. You wrote a book on it. You were studying it. And now you're saying a lot of these large language models, especially a wake-up call for ChatGPT in the world was DeepSeek in Asia, right? So we have access to it, and you can get access if you want. it's not that difficult. But ultimately, you're saying they're going to become a commodity. And then you talk about Microsoft, you talk about Salesforce. What about the little guy? So they have access to all of this data. How does that, and you're saying the small business can compete and or build a a sales force of agents, but
Yeah.
it takes resources. You're not hiring an AI architect to develop a system and a ton of agents for nothing. They get paid a lot of money, and
Yeah. I mean,
the workforce is being they're being snapped up by the people who have more money. They have Google money. There's FU money and Google money, right? So what does that small guy do right now?
Well, I mean, let's break this up. The top tier AI engineers, like the best of the best, the pure architects, are going to be, obviously go to the highest bidder. But what's happening right now is that there's all these programmers out there, right, that have no jobs. Again, right now, I think it was Salesforce said, I think the number is as high as 30-40% of all the coding is being done by AI. Right. And I think Microsoft has it at 50% of all the coding in-house is being done by AI. So think about this. So programmers are going to start losing jobs here soon because they don't need them. In 5 years, I don't know if you'll need that many programmers anymore. So there's going to be a lot of people out there who know how to program. But again, let's go back to what I said earlier, that the new programming language is English if you're in the US, because I can actually talk to the machine, tell it to build something. And by the way, this is sounding foreign maybe to those listening or watching, but when you experience what I just described, that I can type or talk if I'm using a microphone, I literally can say, go to this website, look at the website, copy the website, and it starts coding in front of you. And I keep talking to it. It keeps modifying it. Like I said, I play with Replit. It's called Replit. $25 a month, you can start building apps. And you're no programming language required, but your natural language. So this is going to empower the average person. It's going to democratize. That's a good way of putting it. It's going to democratize programming. Now, if you're a small business owner, how did we do this, John? We had to go I got to go find a programmer or somebody to build my website or somebody to do this for me. Like even with graphics today, I can just go to ChatGPT or Claude, whatever, and say, hey, generate this graphic for me. I don't have to pay anybody. And by the way, guess what? I can tell the machine over and over, no, not right. Change this, change that. The machine doesn't get irritated with it. It just does it, right? And so the same is going to happen.
Why do you point that out? Has anyone ever got irritated with you from asking them?
Yeah, you ever go back to people and say, dude, I don't like that. I don't like the way it looks. Can you change it like that? Because I'm very particular about things. And so I don't like that. I don't like this. The machine just doesn't argue with me. It just keeps doing it. And
I love that.
I'm telling you, for the small business owner, John, what I am saying is that they now have the power to do anything. They can build apps. I went on this website called Suno, SUNO.ai, and I wrote a country song in 5 minutes with full chorus and everything. And it was just me messing around. And I'm like, I said, well, let me see if this really works. And it blew my mind. The thing worked. And I'm like, oh my God, the future is going to look like this. You're going to say, and I'm going to predict this is 5 to 10 years, more closer to 10, but it's going to be 5 to 10 years. John, here's how you're going to watch movies in the future. My favorite genre is gritty Ford revenge flicks, right? That's my jam, gritty Ford revenge. And you're going to be able to say, I want a movie like Man on Fire, and I want it to have this type of plot, but I want to throw a surprise in there. I want to have da-da-da-da. And you could actually define where you want it to take place, right? In Dubai, da-da-da-da-da. And I want, and it's going to build the movie for you. That's the future. It will build the movie for you. And again, sounds crazy now. Play this back in 5 or 10 years. He goes, that's what he meant. You're going to be able to say, I want to watch a movie. I want it to be this. I want it to be that. And it'll start creating it for you. I mean, think about that.
And make me 5 different endings.
What's that?
And give me 5 different endings so I can be entertained when I watch my movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Give me, by the way, give me 3 endings. How's that? Give me 3 endings.
Yeah,
that'd
exactly.
be cool, wasn't it?
So
all that.
This is brilliant conversation. It's so educational, right? It's beyond educational. It's in its essence, it's transformational as long as people can, actually implement it. So when I say about how does someone want to compete with, Google money, Salesforce to build systems. So I build systems, right? The sales machine is a system. It's not just a tool. So moving forward, what would you suggest people do, businesses, to be able to compete with, and be, become a profitable global company using AI. And let's talk about, so what can they do now, right? That is going to be scalable and sustainable, because everything's changing so quickly. So what can they do to build something that's scalable and sustainable, to carve out a niche for what they're doing that will, last long term?
And I think the first part is right. The second part, I question. Everything will be scalable. Can anything be sustainable? This is the new reality we're dealing with. Usually, look, you build a product, and we'll just use Lightspeed VT, right? When Bradley built that product, there was a moat. We call a moat around a product, right? These are things that, only, in this case, Lightspeed VT could do, right? So you have a moat. Every product has to have a moat if it wants to be sustainable, right? Given the market forces. What's happening right now is, I want you to imagine you've built a product and it has a moat, John. Now I want you to further imagine that there's a robot that gets in a boat and crosses the moat, right? Because what's going to happen is the moats are almost going to start disappearing. As soon as you think you have a moat, it's gone. Somebody builds something. Why? Because the cost of knowledge goes to zero, but also almost like the cost of producing a new software product almost goes to zero as well. So again, I urge anybody who's listening or watching this, check out Replit or go to Cursor and start programming and watch how you can build applications, websites right away. And you're like, well, wait a minute. What used to be the moat was that you'd have to have a lot of investment, a lot of time, right? And sorry, these bubbles pop up. So you'd have to have, you have to have time, money, and knowledge. Time, money, and knowledge. So now you got the time. If you don't need that much money, and the knowledge, the system has the knowledge, it'll do it for you. So now I can build systems. So I would rather answer the question this way. If I have an established company already, what I would be focused in on is, I'll look at every company is a summation of processes, right? Different processes for different things. I would start looking at all these different processes, whether it's financial process, contractual, proposal, presentations, sales outreach, whatever it may be, and say, where can I start implementing AI to be more effective and reduce my costs? In other words, what can I start combining? In other words, where can I get rid of people? That's the reality, right?
I was going to say, you're talking about reducing the amount of people.
Yeah, but the thing is, nature tends towards efficiencies, and you just can't deny that first principle. Nature tends towards efficiencies. So you're going to use AI to become more efficient. You're going to have less of an overhead. So your job is to figure out, how can I use AI to drive my sales, but how can I use AI also to drive down my cost? And so what you can begin doing is looking at a process. I'll give you an example to make it tangible. I was working with a window company, right? And one of the things that we talked about is, why don't we implement AI on the post-sales process? Like, you've sold it, now you got to support it, right? Windows. So here's what we suggested. There's programs out there now that, you have Windows, and if your window has a broken seal, it starts getting humidity inside it, right? Well, they have an AI system now that all you have to, I would call in. I go on my website, I call you, or I get on my phone, I call you. Hey, I think my window has a broken seal. They'll say to you, take a picture of it or point your webcam at it. The webcam or the picture, it'll grab the picture, and using AI, it will compare it with a database of photos that they have in their knowledge base. And they go, yep, that's a broken seal. Now, here's what's happening. Let's say you upload the picture, you send them the picture, the AI analyzes the picture, says, yep, that's a broken seal. It'll immediately take your phone number and look up your customer server record. It'll immediately know if it's under warranty. If it is under warranty, the next thing you do, it'll check inventory, because that's the ERP system. It'll check inventory. Guess what? It's in inventory. Now, it'll check the technician's availability and see if they can schedule it for a certain day, and it'll spit out a notification and send it and put it in your calendar with an email. No human intervention. Do all that. Imagine that. It checks and says, yes, it's broken. 2, it checks, see if there's a warranty. You probably have to call another department for that. It checks to see, yes, it's under warranty. It checks inventory to see if the window's there. Yes, so it checks their inventory system. Then it looks at technicians' availability. Imagine if a human had to do all that. This is all AI agents. You got like 4 or 5 agents doing this and talking to each other, and all this is happening in the blink of an eye. That is what I would start doing if I'm a company. If I'm an established company, how do I start using it? Now, if you're an entrepreneur starting out, you almost have to start out with the assumption that your job could possibly be AI'd out. All right? Let's take sales training, since we're in the world of sales training.
Yeah, and you've got courses and you've put in, your entire life into doing this.
Yeah.
So,
By the way, I don't look at it like that, because that to me is sunk cost. And there's something called the sunk cost fallacy. Is that it's like, because I've sunk all that money in, you hold on to it, right? You try to hold on to it, but the reality is you sunk it. It happened. The markets move, so you have to shift. You have to let go. So I'm asking myself a different question right now. Full transparency. I said, where is the sales world going to be in 5 to 10 years? Well, I just told you, a lot of it's going to be AI'd out. What I think is going to happen, and I'm betting on this, is that if I believe that the contractor business is going up, plumbing, electrician, so forth, you can't AI those things out so fast. In other words, no robot's going to be as good as a plumber these days. It's going to be very hard to get a robot to do what plumbers do, right? So I say, there's going to be a market, and I'll call that the contracting business, roofing, right? Plumbing, HVAC, that cannot be AI'd out because robots aren't there yet. So that means there's a market where my skill sets, I will shift my attention towards that market. And that's me thinking how best to adapt to the new realities. I don't ignore the reality. I'm telling you right now, salespeople will be AI'd out. So where won't they be AI'd out? And then I'll look at that and say, okay, can I play in that market and can I make a business of it? So that's how people need to think about it. If they currently have a business or a skill set, they have to ask themselves, okay, well, where can I play? Where can I win? And then aim their guns that way.
amen. And so to be more specific, what I was asking, you put your life into the sales game and you've created some amazing courses. You've written books on it. You just wrote The Future of Selling. So more specifically, how would you leverage those resources and that knowledge that you created, even as a company, to evolve it? And how does that align with the book you wrote, your new book, The Future of Selling?
I mean, I look at so I published The Future of Selling in March. We're in July now, 3 months later. I can tell you right now, I can go back and probably add a couple of more chapters. That's how much has changed already. And so I think that's the new reality we're living in. Everything is changing so fast. I go back to my globe analogy, my snow globe analogy. Everything is just like in the air right now, and everything is changing so quickly. And again, I think what you're asking me is what a lot of people ask me, and I think it's not the way to look at it. I'm asking myself, what's changing and where's the ball going to be? You know the whole Wayne Gretzky thing, never go where the puck's at, go where it's going to be. And so we're all trying to figure out, where is the puck going to be? And so since we don't really know, we have an instinct, much like Gretzky, where it might be, I start asking myself, what do I need to do or what do I need to learn to be in a better position to be where that puck is going to be? So if I'm a company or small business owner, I got to start looking at these things and start saying, well, how can I begin using this? Because it's only in using the tools, implementing the tools, some successes, some failures, that you begin to get a sense of where this might work and where it's not going to work. You and I come from a world of doing, right? And you know as well as I do, you got to do and figure it out. You're going to slam up against the wall and go, that was a bad idea. Let's not do that again, right? And so you can't intellectualize these types of changes. And so when I look at my business, I see all these courses, and if I can find a way to still leverage them, I will. I'll see if I can find that. But I also know that a lot of people are turning towards these large language models for answers now. But that's the future. You will now, I read a study. It was an interesting paper on qualified leads. And here's what, it's like recent. This is really interesting. And what they found is that qualified leads that came from a large language model versus one that came through a Google search engine, the ones that came through a large language model are 3 to 4x likely to convert. Now, let me slow that down because this is interesting. Because I wrote a paper like 2 years ago. It's on LinkedIn that the search engine results page is dead. The Google pages are dead. The blue links are dead. Right? Because what will happen with large language models is we're not going to go to Google anymore. We're going to go to our favorite large language model. Let's say again, ChatGPT. I'm going to type in, hey, I'm looking for this product or this service. I need sales training, right? There's John, sales machine. Tell me about John's sales machine. Yeah, does he do this? Does he do that? And I'll go down that rabbit hole. Notice I'm not going through a lot of pages like a Google search engine, right? I'm asking it and it's engaging with me and it knows what I want. And I'm asking it, and again, the large language model doesn't really have a bias. It's going to give me what I ask it. I want to know more about John's sales machine. I want to know about this. All of a sudden, it's go through this and, okay, I think this guy checks all the boxes. Let me contact him. That's how people are going to start looking for content. Give me the top 3, start whittling it down. But they're going to go from the large language model to your website. So now, what does that mean? This is important. The new question then becomes, let's help business owners out here, John. Let's help them out right now. If you want agents in the future to find you, when I say agents in the future, I mean by the end of the year and next year, He says, everybody uses HTML and we still use tags, right? But there's agents they can read these things, but it's not efficient. So there's something called JSON, it's JavaScript Object Notation, JSON, JSON. And if you have a website today, or any PDF documents on your website, like manuals or brochures, you need to create a JSON file with those, because what happens is agents read these JSON files. It's almost like an easier language. JSON is a schema, so to speak. It's a way of writing language that the agent understands. And the thing is, it's not that complicated. You can go today. I can go. In fact, when you're done with this, John, you try it out. Go to your website, right? What's the website? What's your main website?
thesalesmachine.com.
Okay. Just say, go into ChatGPT. It says, create a JSON code or codes for thesalesmachine.com. Or just say, what do I need to do to make my website, thesalesmachine.com, agent friendly? And it will tell you the JSON. It'll actually write the code for you. And all you have to do is insert it into your HTML code. And now it's agent ready. And most people don't know this. It's the easiest thing to do. Most people don't think about it. Because again, tagging and things of that nature, meta tags, I think that's yesterday. Tomorrow, it's JSON language. A PDF file, create a JSON code for this PDF file. So when the agent goes to your website, it can read the JSON file for your PDF file. And so again, just do this and then report back to your team if this works. And it'll blow your mind. And by the way, so if you want to be ahead of the curve, this is why you're listening to The Sales Machine. Just that tip alone puts you ahead of 95+% of everybody in the market right now.
Yeah, and this is fascinating. Like you said, it's fascinating. You're fascinating, Victor. And your name is fascinating. Victor means victorious among men. I love your name.
Thank you. And I like it too, actually. I didn't like it as a kid, but I like it now.
Names mean a lot to me. I named my son Sky.
Nice.
So he could be limitless.
Dude, love that.
So where's the hockey puck going for Victor?
For Victor, I'm still trying to figure it out. I really am. Everybody comes to me like, well, what's the answer? I go, I don't know. I keep studying. I keep reading. Right now, I'm reading a book called How to Think About AI by a guy named Richard Susskind. I have it right here in case you think I'm making this up. All right. And this guy takes an intellectual approach to whereas a philosophical approach. And so I'm doing the continuous learning piece, the Kaizen piece, which is just trying to learn. And I guess the more information I gather, the more I start getting a sense of where it's going. What I do a lot is I go to X, right? X.com, what used to be Twitter. And then I follow some of the best minds on AI. And every day I'm just trying to get a sense of where this is all going. And I'm still trying to navigate the journey, man. I think anybody who says, I know where I'm going because I know where AI is going is lying or delusional, take your pick, because it is moving so quickly. It's so exponential that all I can tell people now is you need to start studying this stuff. And by that, I mean, just understand basic stuff about it. What's a large language model? What are these learning models? What are parameters? What are all these little things that you need to know about how to use the tools, and then start using some of the tools like ChatGPT. And I always tell people, stop using ChatGPT like a search engine and start using it like an assistant for it to answer your question. I mean, in the old days, you would pay people to be, you pointed out with Chet Holmes that you probably paid him to be your coach, right? Well, guess what? You can tell ChatGPT to be your coach and it'll start designing stuff for you. And this is today. One of the things I train people on, and not by train, I mean, I just show them, is that you can use ChatGPT or any large language model for role playing. You can say, you're a customer, here are your 5 objections. My name is Victor. Let's go through the role play. Give me a chance to respond. And the thing will actually start role playing with you. Right? So you can actually role play with the large language model so you can practice. If you want to do something even cooler, is that you could tell the large language model, hey, you're this customer. I'll just say this. I'm selling windows and you're a property management company. You're a property management manager. I'm a salesperson trying to sell you windows. Here are your 5 objections. I'm going to try to sell you. And then you say to the large language model, you're going to play the role of the property manager and you're going to play the role of the salesperson. Go. And it starts role playing by itself. And what's cool about that, if you've never done that, is that you begin to get the language. You see how it role plays and what words or phrases it uses. Now it actually overcomes objections. And then you can learn from watching the large language model role play itself. What's more fascinating is that data, that information it's using is based on some of the best sales experts. So you're getting these large language models that are talking to each other and teaching you how to role play. So there's so many ways you can use it. My point being here is that I don't know where the puck is going, but all I know is if you're not trying to educate yourself right now to where it might be going, start using the tools to understand how you can use it, and then maybe start implementing some of the things, the applications like Replit and Cursor, and start building stuff. That's the only way you're going to kind of get closer to where the puck might be. But if you're waiting back for some moment in time for something to go click, it's not going to happen. So I say we're feeling our way through the dark right now because we're all trying to understand it. And don't be fooled by all these CEOs. I don't care if it's a Musk, an Amadei, Nadala, or all these people, that tell you, here's what we think is going. Sam Altman from ChatGPT. They're all guessing. They're all guessing how this is all going to roll out. None of them know. In fact, here's the dirty little secret in the large language model business is that think of the large language model as the black box, right? And you type it an input, a prompt, and then it gives you an output, right? Whatever you ask it for, right? They don't know what's in the box. This is the crazy thing, that none of these AI experts can tell you how the box works. They just can't tell you. They'll tell you it has 3 billion parameters. It uses weighted system like a neural network, with a recurrent system, blah, blah. But you say, but how does it work though? We don't know. We don't know. That's a reality. They don't know. And when I tell this to people, they're like, really, Victor? Come on, they do know. No, there's a new field called mechanistic interpretability, which is based on trying to understand what's in the box because nobody understands what's in the box. So I say that as a side commentary that nobody knows where it's going because even the best of the best, even the expert, the people building this don't know what's in the box.
Right. And so I find it interesting.
Sorry, that was too deep, wasn't it? I went too far on that one. No. I feel like I went too far on that one.
No, well, you know what? For some people, you might have. But from my own experience, someone once said, and I don't know who said it, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
You're in the wrong room. No.
And I 100% agree with that. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So get into a room. And I love how you identify that you go on X because everybody, unlike before, you said the knowledge base is to zero. Now they have something that's even more powerful. They have access. They have access to getting into rooms, whether it's on X, whether it's using ChatGPT to find experts. They have access. So there's really no excuse, but they're just not aware of that access and or aware of the capability and or aware of the resources. So when I asked you also, what's next for you? Where's the hockey puck going for Victor? Because I want to be in that room. How do people get in that room with you? Because ultimately, and or on X, because I made the conscious decision 2 months ago, all of our resources, currently what business we're doing, we keep doing that. And we're going to come from service and we're going to pivot all of our resources into AI models because it's not future, it's right now. And I have in-house engineers. We will give them the opportunity to upskill because I believe in tribes and I still love my people. And therefore, I need to upskill them. And the ones that do, great. If the ones who don't, they're choosing that. And that's okay too. So how do people get in the room with you as an example and or work with you? Because I think it's phenomenal. You were not only ahead of the curve, but because of your own psychology of Kaizen, never-ending improvement from the Japanese, you're going to be ahead of the curve. And I believe you need to be ahead of the curve because it's what we're doing now that's going to change our future. Us as individuals, as teams, as organizations, it's what we're doing now. And, I'm not waiting because I don't see the future. I don't know the future. Aaron Ross wrote a book called Predictable Revenue, right? And everybody wants to talk about key performance indicators and different methodologies. But, ask somebody what a key performance indicator is. It's different for every role, right? Like what's a key performance indicator? Let's go back to key of the performance. Like a sales generation activity is the key if you're in sales, right? So in saying all of that, what is the key, right, that people must focus on every day? to have a predictable future, because there's got to be some sort of certainty. Otherwise, people will check out and they won't commit to it.
Yeah. Well, here, I'll give you a simple rule. And we can probably start closing on this. And that is, so I wear this band. You have to see my band. I wear a band here. And so on one side, I should take it off so you can see it. And then I'll tell you the purpose of this band. I created this band. So on one side, it says one thing, right? You ever been to a Brazilian restaurant where you had the red and green thing? You know?
Yeah.
So if you got it on red, they leave you alone. But if you put it on green, they bring you some meat, right?
Yeah.
So the red is, what's the one thing you need to do today? What's one thing you need to do today? And then when I'm done doing, it's a reminder. So at the end of the day, what I try to do is make sure it's on the green side, which means done. Sorry, done, right? So every day I start on the red side. What's the one thing I need to do every day to move the ball forward? And so I'll give you this formula. It's not a formula. It's just a simple numbers game here. You know the following. If I would improve 1% every day in 70 or 72 days, I would be, I think, 2x better. Within 232 days, I would be 10x better if I improve 1% every day. And at the end of the year, if I improve 1% every day, I would be 37x better, right? So this begs the question. So what's 1%? What's 1% improvement every day? What is that? Well, if you take one day, which is 1,440 minutes, 1% of that is 14.4 minutes. Let's just call it 15. So every day, if you just improve in one direction, dedicate 15 minutes to that direction, 72 days, you'll be 2x better. After 232 days, you'll be 10x better. By the end of the year, you'll be next better. Second year, it's even more exponential. So what I tell people when they're frustrated, they don't know where to begin, I said, pick a direction and then start studying something and dedicate 15 minutes a day to that one thing. And that's how you begin to get better. And this is what I do with AI stuff. I try to at least I always dedicate at least 15 minutes, if not more, to trying to understand, listening to a webinar, listening to speakers, listening to a podcast like this, trying to learn, trying to understand. And that is the one thing. Because remember, it's always about the locus of control. Remember the 7 habits of highly effective people. Find what you can control. It's very stoic, right? And so be like a stoic. What can you control? You can control your time and how you dedicate. So everybody has 15 minutes that they can give to something they're dedicated to, and just move in that direction and become an expert in that. And again, at the end of the year, you'll be 37x better. And if you look at the second year, it just gets even more exponential. And so that's the one thing you could do to reduce that, what I call that anxiety. Because sometimes we get this anxiety because we feel like we're not keeping up, we're not moving, we're not doing the right things. But if every day you're giving it just a little bit, 15 minutes at a minimum, you'll just get better in that one direction.
You're an amazing man, Victor. I love the predictability and where you've gone from Sales Ex Machina now to the future of selling. Do you still work with organizations, or how do people reach out to you besides getting the book, The Future of Selling, which, it's a must read for me because I'm going to be in your room and in your head regardless. Do you still work with organizations, and how do people connect with you?
Yeah, I do. I'll be clear. I don't do any coaching. I don't do any one-on-one coaching. So companies usually hire me to do either keynotes or come in and train their sales team and work with them. And then in some cases, even how to use some AI applications to sell more effectively. So you can find me at victorantonio.com. Just type in Victor Antonio. You'll find me.
Amen. Hey, man, thanks for being on the show. You're brilliant. I'm going to be doing more than 15 minutes a day.
Yeah.
I'm really going to focus on.
I know you will. I know you will.
That's a wrap, folks. Thanks for joining me today. And if you got value from this episode, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and refer a friend. And if you want even more value, go to thesalesmachine.com, click on resources, and there's tons of resources there to increase profits and drive performance in your business. Right on, come on.